Jake here with AmericanMuscle.com, and today we are taking a look at this Navos full-screen OE style radio upgrade with navigation for 2015 and newer Mustangs. Big screens are all the rage these days, and if you're looking for a way to update the infotainment or integrate some more features into your Mustang, then this unit from Navos is going to be right up your alley. This is a large 12-inch touchscreen display that is going to upgrade not just the look, but also the functionality of your car in a way that looks factory fresh. So if you're on the hunt for a way to add navigation or streaming apps to your car, but you're not necessarily a fan of traditional aftermarket head units, this is a perfect option for you. Not only does it look like original equipment, but it seamlessly integrates your infotainment and climate controls, plus some other secondary controls into one large display. Plenty of Mustangs came with the small 4-inch screen, which, if we're being honest, looks a little bit dated even if the car is only a few years old. So it makes sense that you might want to update your infotainment for both the sake of look and functionality. Now, OEM upgrades are available from the manufacturer, but they can be super expensive, so it's only natural to look to the aftermarket for something different. And unlike most aftermarket solutions, this unit is going to look right at home in your Mustang because it's designed to look like an OEM type of setup. So what we've got here again is a large 12.1-inch vertical capacitive touchscreen. Now this is Android based and it runs the 8.1 Oreo operating system, which means that in addition to the built-in apps and capabilities, you also have the option to run Android supported apps like Waze, Google Maps, or Spotify, just to name a few. Now of course, it also includes support for AM/FM radio, and it even has a built-in navigation system that includes 2 and 3D models plus 3D building views from major cities. Now you can also link Android and Apple devices via Bluetooth so you can stream music or make calls while you're out on the move, but it is worth mentioning that Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are not supported here. However, you do get some other cool features, including the integration of the climate controls. Now, since this unit is rather large, it's going to take the place of your radio display and the HVAC controls in your car. And Navos found a way to integrate them. So when you power on the display, you're going to see a row of icons down at the bottom here that are always present regardless of what screen or function you're using. One of them is climate, and tapping that is going to take you into a screen that allows you to adjust the fan speed, temperature, as well as other comfort features such as heated seats if your car is so equipped. Now, if your truck has a backup camera or parking sensors, those are also retained, and the camera's feed will display right here on the screen. You're going to get a much better view of your surroundings since this is a nice large screen, and it's going to make it much easier to get into that tough parking spot. Now, if you want to add additional cameras, those are supported too. In addition to all of that, you also get 64 gigabytes of internal memory, 4 gigabytes of RAM, plus HDMI, RCA, and 2 USB inputs. So if you're planning on building out your audio system, adding amplifiers, subs, or anything like that, this unit has the capability to support it all. And it even has an internal 4x45 watt amplifier. However, all that said, we do need to talk about pricing. Now this is going to run you around $1,500, and while yes, that is not exactly inexpensive, believe it or not, it does undercut some of the other options out there for this generation of Mustang, even the ones that are simply sync updates. Now if your car came with that small display, or even if you just aren't a fan of other aftermarket head units, this is an excellent option for you. No, it is not inexpensive, but you are getting a lot for your money here with the functionality and the integration of the unit itself. And that brings us nicely to the construction. I really can't stress enough how good this thing looks once it's installed. So many aftermarket head units look tacked on or they stick out like a sore thumb, but that's really not the case here at all. The bezel around the screen is designed to match perfectly with the rest of the dash, and it's meant to fit the Mustang. So this isn't something that was cut and pasted that requires a separate kit to make it look decent. This was designed specifically for the S550. And my favorite part is that you get all these physical controls on the side for your infotainment, your climate control, and some other primary and secondary functions. So there's no need for you to take your eyes off the road at all to make adjustments to things like temperature or volume while you're driving. So for example, your start-stop button moves up here to the top left, plus you get separate buttons for your fan speed. You have your volume knob here, and on the other side you've got your hazard switch, your rear defroster, your steering mode, traction control button, plus your drive mode selector here. And you also get a tuning knob, which is super rare on an aftermarket head unit. And you even have a mute button right here. I love that. I love that it has all these physical controls. About the only drawback I see with this button setup is that if your Mustang has those toggle switches on the bottom, you're going to lose them. But if your car didn't have them to start with, if you have the small screen, you don't have the toggle switches, so it's really no great loss there. Plus, again, you're getting all of this integrated here, so there's no loss of functionality. I really think this is a pretty slick looking setup, and if somebody got into your car and they didn't know, they'd very likely assume that it came this way from the factory. So, how easy is this going to be to install? We're going to rate this one a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and it should take you around 2 hours to get it installed. That's mostly because you're going to have to remove not only the stock stereo unit, but also the HVAC controls below it. Now the kit comes with this screen unit as well as all the wiring harnesses that you see here, which is everything you're going to need to get it hooked up. If you've replaced the stereo before, you know these things can be a little finicky, and there are a lot of wiring harnesses here, but this is something that you can definitely accomplish at home. Again, everything you need is here, including the GPS antenna, the RCA cables, inputs for the camera, as well as the main harnesses over here. Now it is good if you're at least familiar with wiring, but you really don't need to do anything other than plug these into the correct spots. Overall, it's a pretty straightforward install, just a bit time consuming. And with that, let's head over to the install bay now and we'll show you how to get this done.
Okay, the tools required for this installation will be a soft cloth, a small Phillips head screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver, a soft trim removal tool, 7mm socket, a small extension, and a ratchet. Hi everyone, today we're going to be doing a radio upgrade on our 2015 Mustang, so let's get started with the uninstall. Okay, our first step is going to be to remove this trim piece here, and we're going to use our soft trim removal tool to get that done. Okay, so since we have gauges in between our AC vents, we can't completely remove the trim panel yet. We just pull it out far enough so that we can disconnect the gauges. Okay, so here's our connector for the 2 gauges. We just need to pull up on the black tab at the bottom and pull the connector out. Okay, our next step is to remove a small black rectangle down here at the bottom of the radio to expose the 2 7mm nuts that have to come off. And we're going to use a small flathead screwdriver to remove that rectangle. Okay, now we can use our 7mm socket to remove these 2 bolts at the bottom of the radio. All right, now we're going to remove the 2 7mm bolts at the top of the radio with our 7mm socket. Okay, our next step is to use our trim removal tool to slide down between the radio and the dash trim to release the plastic clips that are holding the radio into the dash at this point. Now the only thing is you have to use the tool and pry the radio out at the same time. Okay, so this last part may be a little bit difficult, so you may want to consider using your pry tool to lift up on the trim to remove the radio faceplate. Okay, now we've got some electrical connections back here that we need to remove first, and then we can go ahead and get this faceplate removed out. You may want to use your flathead screwdriver as well to get some of these clips to unhook. Okay, for the USB connector that you've got in here, there's two clips, one on top, one on bottom. So you'll need to pry both of those up to get it out. Okay, now we're ready to remove the display and the control module, and there's 4 7mm bolts on each. So let's go ahead and get those taken out with our 7mm socket. All right, now that we've got those 4 bolts removed, we can go ahead and remove the display unit. Okay, so we've got 2 electrical connectors that we have to remove before we can actually pull the display out. Okay, now we can go ahead and take out the control module using our 7mm socket. Okay, so there's 4 connectors in the back of the control module that have to be disconnected before we can actually complete the uninstall of the control module. 2 of them have push-down connectors, so they're on the left-hand side, and so then you just have to disconnect the other 2 cables for the antennas. Okay, on the antenna cables, you might not be able to get your finger on those connectors, so using a flathead screwdriver will make the job much easier. Okay, we will need to reuse a couple of these orange clips to go onto the new system, so let's go ahead and take those off with our small flathead screwdriver. Now I would also caution you to be very careful when you're taking these off because they are spring loaded and they may fly. Okay, one other thing that we need to transfer over from our old system to our new system is going to be our 12-volt power supply. So in order to do that, we'll use our flathead screwdriver and pop the clips out on the back side of this adapter. Okay, now we're ready to start our install. First thing we have to do is connect our 12-volt adapter to our new bracket. Okay, to install our 12-volt adapter, we have to align a slot on the side of the adapter to a peg on the bracket itself. Easiest way to figure that out is that the door on the adapter goes to the outside of the bracket. You may need a little flathead screwdriver to help persuade this to go in. It is a tight fit. There you go. Now we can attach this bracket to the new unit. Okay, to attach this bracket to the new unit, there are 3 pegs on the back of the unit and a supplied set of screws to attach it. Okay, now we can attach our bracket with our 3 screws using our small Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, now we can attach our orange spring clips that we took off the old unit, and then we can start doing our electrical connections. Okay, before we finish up the connections on our electrical system, you need to know which HVAC system you have on your vehicle. If you have the 4 switches like we have here, you have the high HVAC system. If you do not have the 4 switches, you have the low HVAC system. You will need to know this information when you do the setup later on. Okay, now we're actually ready to install our new unit. And as you can tell, we've got quite a few wiring harnesses laid out here. So let's get started on which ones go where and get this thing installed. So for our vehicle, we have several harnesses that we're not going to be using. Mostly due to the fact that we do not have any aftermarket audio accessories in our vehicle. So these that are labeled right here are either for aftermarket or different years of our Mustang. So be prepared that you are going to have some leftover parts and pieces that you're not going to need. So don't worry too much about those. Okay, the first harness we're going to deal with is our main power harness. And we also have a CAN box that attaches to that. And everything is labeled of where you need to go to. So as you can see the label right here, it says to CAN box. So we can go ahead and get that hooked up before we actually put it in the car. And then we'll take the single end connector and plug that in right there. All right, now we've got our GPS antenna. And as you can see, it has a blue connector. So that just goes on to this blue connector right here. Now, we also have our Wi-Fi antenna. And you can see that it has a gold connector on it. That's going to screw right into our gold connector here. Now we have our regular radio antenna with a connector on one end that will connect to the connector in the vehicle itself. That plugs in on this side here. Okay, next we have basically our reverse camera connection. Okay, it has an RCA connector that separates, so it's got 2 harnesses. You just connect that together, and then this plugs in to the bottom, to the back side of the radio here, at the very top right. And then this will connect to another connector in the car itself. This one here is for the mic. That plugs in right below the camera connection there. And the microphone, once we get it installed in the vehicle, we'll go ahead and connect that up. Now we're ready to actually install it in the vehicle and get everything hooked up. Okay, in addition to the connections that we've already made, here we have a USB port, we have a 12-volt power adapter, and we have two other connections here that are connected to the wiring harness in the vehicle as well. So once we get it in the car, we'll show you where those plug in. Now we're going to prepare for the installation of our microphone, and you can run this and install it anywhere that you prefer. For our installation purposes, we're going to attach it to these vent spokes right here next to the steering wheel. Okay, once you've got that installed where you want it, then it's just a matter of running the wire behind the dash so that we can connect it to the system itself. Now for our case, what we're going to do is run it right behind the trim panel here and drop the cable down behind. Now we're ready to actually connect the new system. And one other note on this as well is that you'll notice that we have a GPS antenna and we have a Wi-Fi antenna. You can mount those anywhere that you choose as well. For our purposes, we're just going to leave them where they are. So let's go ahead and get everything connected. Okay, before we actually get to installing this, my recommendation is to pull your gear shift back into one of the even numbered gears, either 2, 4, or 6, and cover the knob with some sort of cloth to prevent scratching from the on the screen while you're doing the installation. So now it's going to be a little difficult to show this on camera, but I'll do the best we can to show you how everything connects. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is install our stock USB port into the bottom of this bracket here. Here's your USB cable. We're just going to slide it in until it clicks. Okay, now we can go ahead and connect our microphone like so. Okay, now this yellow adapter here is for the antenna itself, so we can go ahead and connect that. You have this T-shaped connector that goes for your 12-volt adapter port. Now, some of the other connectors, there's only one size, one way that they will go in, so you just have to figure out where on the back of the unit they connect to. Like I said, it is a little tight in here, so take your time, be patient, and everything will go just fine. One thing we do recommend before you install all the screws and trim is to test your system to make sure that everything works first. So let's go ahead and turn that on and check our system. Okay, so once the system is up, you can go through and test and make sure that everything is functioning before you do your final setup. Okay, now we can test our buttons to make sure everything is working. We'll check our fan. Your climate control comes up. Your hazard function works. Okay, so now we can go ahead and actually install this into the dash. First thing you want to do is check to make sure that all the wires are tucked in as well as possible, so that we can go ahead and just slip this in without pinching any of the wires. Okay, now we can install our 4 screws with our 7mm socket and get this tightened up. Okay, since these bottom 2 screws are really tight to get into, I suggest that you put a piece of electrical tape around your screw on your socket in order to help with installation. Okay, now we can go ahead and reconnect our gauges and install our dash trim. All right, here's our connector. Plug that back into the back of your trim piece. Make sure everything's lined up. And your install is complete.
That's going to do it for our review and install of the Navos full-screen OE style radio upgrade with navigation for 2015 and newer Mustangs. Thanks so much for joining us, and remember, for all things Mustang, be sure to keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.